Good afternoon. My former chairman in the Finance Commission, Shri N.K. Singh, Chief Economic Advisor Anant Nageswaran, my very good friend, my colleague Deputy Governor Dr. Michael Patra, and other colleagues from the Reserve Bank and from the banking and the financial sector here in Mumbai, Ms. Ansula Kant, Managing Director, World Bank, eminent panelists who participated in today's discussions, members of this distinguished audience, friends from media, I see some of them here, ladies and gentlemen. Today's seminar on global economy, challenges, opportunities, and the way forward was held as a part of the international financial architecture, that is the IFA, and the framework working groups, that is the FWG work streams under India's G20 presidency. As a follow-up to that, we had 3 panel discussions, and I did attend the first one. Thereafter, I could not. I had to go back and attend to some work. But I have been informed that overall, all these discussions have yielded very rich and insightful thoughts on the topics that were listed for today's discussion. Especially, I think the suggestions and the thoughts were mainly centered on financing development and global public goods, on tackling global debt vulnerabilities, and also they focused on key risks to global economy. Now, all these issues are priorities under the G20 presidency of India. I take this opportunity to thank all the participants for enhancing the quality of discussions during the day. I would also like to make a special mention of the participation of the audience through various comments and questions. On the whole, I think we have had a very fruitful and productive discussion today. Policymakers today across the world are grappling with multifarious and intertwined challenges in ensuring post-pandemic recovery in the face of elevated inflation, financial market vulnerabilities, reduced policy headroom, and geopolitical tensions. In this milieu, India's G20 presidency aims at enhancing global cooperation to face such challenges. This is embodied in the presidency theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is one earth, one family, one future. The theme underlines the importance of global public goods for common prosperity of all. Global public goods play a very crucial role in shaping developmental strategies and securing human welfare across borders and generations. Financing them has become a critical issue in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, the highly unsettled geopolitical environment, climate change, fractures in international supply chains, and tectonic shifts in financial market conditions and global liquidity. Now, what strikes me today is that all these points which I mentioned, these are the same points which come up when we are talking of global debt, when we are talking of other challenges, when we are talking about challenges to global growth, or when we discuss monetary policy as a part of the Monetary Policy Committee deliberations. I think these are problems which are today, they permeate into every discussion because they essentially constitute the challenges that the world faces today. Given the confluence of all these factors, global financial stability is gaining prominence in the hierarchy of global public goods. India's experience has shown how digital public infrastructure can be utilized for advancing financial inclusion and productivity gains through cost reductions. Our sustained engagement in the India Stack and the Unified Payments Interface, that is the UPI, especially during the pandemic and thereafter, has filled us with the conviction that digital public infrastructure like the UPI can become a critical part of global public goods when scaled up beyond national borders. While the UPI has been a public sector-led initiative, it's not necessary that public goods can only be developed and financed by the public sector. The private sector needs to engage in the provision of global public goods, not just because they create an enabling ecosystem for businesses to thrive, but also because they would be commercially viable endeavor. In this regard, it's worthwhile to build innovative design features which private investors find attractive in financing of global public goods. In the investment cascade, keeping in view the very large investment requirements, the trigger financing can come from public investment. This would help in minimizing risk and expanding market access. Subsequent financing needs can be met by the private sector. This is where international capital flows and movements assume importance. Hence, risk sharing should be an important design element in fostering private financing for public goods. In this endeavor, multilateral development banks could catalyze private sector investment through risk-sharing mechanisms. Recent fault lines in global cooperation have led to under-provisioning of global public goods and erosion of economic welfare. Absence of seamless access to COVID-19 vaccines is a case in point. Similarly, the lack of timely financial support and creditor cooperation can explain, even if partly, the rising debt stress in some developing economies. High and unsustainable debt levels have severely constrained many countries, limiting their fiscal capacity. While the G20-led initiatives such as the Common Framework for Debt Treatment and the Debt Service Suspension initiatives have been discussed intensely, significant progress beyond discussions have to be achieved. I would like to make 3 specific suggestions in this context. First, it's essential that debt sustainability analysis for countries is realistic on growth and fiscal projections are fully founded on accurate and comprehensive debt data. A global debt data sharing platform can help in this regard. Establishing such a platform could be very challenging and may take several years. In the interregnum, therefore, we may examine the possibility of constructing suitable proxies for debt flows. Such proxies may be derived from data on capital flows and locational banking statistics from sources such as the Institute of International Finance, IIF, and the Bank for International Settlements, that is the BIS. The second suggestion I would like to make is that a multilateral debt relief program providing targeted assistance to low-income countries with high level of debt needs to be considered on a priority basis. This initiative can be designed with a clear focus on utilization of debt relief for sustainable development projects and poverty reduction efforts. To this end, instruments such as debt for development swaps and green debt relief programs could be employed. Third, the crucial role of International Monetary Fund and the World Bank in addressing global debt vulnerabilities cannot be overstated. These institutions are at the center of international monetary and financial systems. Hence, it is incumbent upon them to do more for countries in debt distress. At present, the International Monetary Fund, that is the IMF's precautionary programs, such as the precautionary lending line, are available for countries with sound macro fundamentals. However, I see little reason for countries with strong macro fundamentals to seek precautionary lines. Further, standby arrangements are offered for countries with a balance of payments crisis. But standby arrangements come with performance benchmarks and are often attached with some kind of a stigma. This is an important issue as the recent experience shows how the perceived stigma and or lack of access to IMF programs can cause countries to seek support from other borrowers rather than the IMF, with debt sustainability consequences for these very countries. It may be helpful if programs can be designed with less conditionality for countries with macro fundamentals that are not sound but reasonably resilient, if they are not marred by balance of payments stress. The key point that I am trying to make here is that corrective measures, including financing, should be put in place in a timely, non-stigmatized, and more open access basis. For this purpose, a bigger and stronger IMF that is capable of managing the levels of country risk assumes crucial importance. Since the IMF's support is linked to quota size of countries, the 16th General Review of Quotas and its attendant requirements, including governance reform, needs to be completed expeditiously. Besides enhancing the legitimacy of the IMF in its oversight of international monetary and financial system, this will increase traction for the IMF's policy advice. We must not allow the burden of debt to stifle the potential for growth in large number of countries. In this connection, the panel discussion on key risks to global growth, namely inflation, financial stability, and climate change, assume topical relevance. Even as global economic outlook is marred by risks to downside, long-term structural challenges such as climate change must be addressed through supply of adequate and affordable financing for green transition. We must, however, be mindful of the potential financial stability implications of green transition. The transition efforts must address both physical and transition risks of climate change. Smooth and orderly green transition is absolutely necessary to avoid disruptions to economic activity and loss of growth potential. While the investment needs for smooth green transition are large, the actual financial flows to green projects are highly skewed and are by and large concentrated in the advanced economies. There is an urgent need to enhance green capital flows especially to the emerging market and developing economies. As noted by the IMF in its recent Global Financial Stability Report, the green flows to EMDs are curtailed by inadequate supply of green-rated investment projects. While green flows today are dependent on ESG ratings, recent research shows that these ESG ratings do not adequately reflect financial and non-financial materialities of these investments. Therefore, there is a need to ensure that green ratings reflect the actual environmental impact of the projects so as to avoid greenwashing. A crucial aspect of this effort is ensuring private financing for climate transition efforts through globally comparable and transparent disclosure norms and taxonomy of green activities. The International Sustainability Standards Board, that is the ISSB, is actively working on all these aspects. While efforts are underway to improve and deepen green financing, it is equally critical to fortify regulatory frameworks that enable the implementation of climate taxonomy across jurisdictions, prevent greenwashing, and facilitate sufficient green capital flows to the emerging market and developing economies. A comprehensive and collaborative approach involving governments, private sector entities, financial institutions, civil society organizations, and the general public is essential for ensuring a successful transition to a sustainable future. Let me now conclude by saying that structural challenges such as financing global public goods, managing global debt vulnerabilities, and dealing with climate transition are uphill tasks which no country can achieve alone. Recommitting to multilateralism is the need of the hour, and this is precisely what the Indian presidency of G20 is trying to foster. It is also important to take note of the people-centric transformative changes taking place in G20 member countries, like, for example, the UPI and the financial inclusion initiatives in India. Wider adoption of such models would make the world a better place for everyone and offer opportunities to everyone. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.